So I'm going to welcome Harrell and Harrell, and he will introduce the panel. So let's welcome our panelists, everyone. Oh, yeah, this is for you guys.
Okay. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. Let's hope that gets fixed. Let's try again. I'm going to start with speaker introductions, quick to that, and I will let each speaker introduce themselves when they get to the questions part more. So we'll start with Antonella Commiato, who is a proven leader in strategic IT alignment, project delivery, and team management. She excels at problem solving, turning around projects on time and within budget. Antonella is known for her innovative technology solutions and ability to collaborate with diverse teams and partners. Next, Nikolay Chernavsky, who is a cybersecurity expert specialized in building information security programs. He has extensive experience improving cybersecurity posture for healthcare and financial institutions. Nikolay excels at developing risk management strategies that align with business objectives. He has taken various industry roles, including chairman for FSI Mortgage Risk Council and co-chair for CISO Executive Forum. Ohanian, you all know he was our keynote, an accomplished information security officer with 25 years of experience in information technology and cybersecurity. He is currently serving as the Information Security Officer for the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services. He has successfully implemented cybersecurity and privacy programs at DCFS, and he has received multiple awards for his achievement in improving organization cybersecurity posture. And last, we have Dr. Dale Zabriskie, who is a renowned cybersecurity expert with over 20 years of experience. He has advised organizations globally in healthcare, public sector, finance, retail, entertainment, and manufacturing. Dale is a certified CISSP and possesses cloud security knowledge. He is well known for his engaging communication style, and he's been a popular panel participant moderator. So I'm going to start with some questions. I'm going to start with Antonella. So, and then the other speakers can chime in and fill in, although with one mic, so can't really chime in that well. So what are the biggest threats, a two-part question, what are the biggest threats within your environment or customer base, and what are people most concerned about given the recent major vulnerabilities? What is the biggest shift in security approaches within your customer base, and what are organizations prioritizing when it comes to new tools or technologies?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. So the biggest threat that continues to face organizations is an insider threat. And we heard that from many different presentations today, right? These are employees or independent contractors that have access inside the perimeters. They already are authorized to connect to systems that could be very sensitive, and either because they're clueless, careless, or criminals, whichever one of the three C's, they could cause insecurity incidents that could have serious consequences for an organization, right? To spice the insider threat up, we're seeing that in the last few years, nation-state threat actors are targeting employees that are of the same nation, maybe from China, maybe from Russia, and they either offer significant bribes. So we have the example of the Tesla employee from Russia that was offered first $500,000, I think, and then $1 million to put malware in the Tesla system, and luckily for Tesla, it didn't do it, and actually worked with the FBI, and the Russian threat actor was arrested. And there are some cases in which the nation threat actors also target employees, and they threaten to cause havoc to the family that are in the nation state, right? Either incarcerate them or persecute them somehow. And that is the case of the GE Aviation Chinese employee that fell victim of that. And so it's a big problem. So what should organizations do? For sure, they need to be very clear on what role have access to which systems and data. They're very sensitive in nature. And employees that have those roles should be undergoing extreme vetting, right? And it shouldn't be just one time and done. It should be periodically redone so that we can make sure nothing changed in the background of the employee or in the state of that employee. They can also do some best practices like least privilege, segregation of duties. These are all things that job rotations. These are all things that can help in detect insider threat. And then, does everybody know when is Insider Threat Awareness Month? When? No. Try again. September. But you don't have to wait for September to find some really good stuff as far as training for insider threats. So CISA.gov, DHS have great videos, posters, and other information, because employees really need training on detecting insider threat, and once they observe that behavior, know what to do with it, right? Who to report it to and what information they need to collect. As far as the second part of the question, right, what I'm seeing organizations now is taking a step back as far as the cybersecurity solution investments that they've made. Small to medium-sized organizations might have 40 to 50 different cyber tools in their organizations. Enterprise organizations have 130 or more. And so they're taking a step back and rationalizing, do we have overlap? Can we get rid of some of them? Do we have gaps? And the tools that we have, do we have it configured correctly? Do we have the appropriate training? And if not, what do we need to do, right? And then the other thing that I'm seeing happening right now is that organizations are asking cybersecurity vendors if they have relationships with insurance carriers. So insurance and cybersecurity vendors are now partnering together where the insurance will vet cybersecurity solutions. And if an organization is using those solutions that have been whitelisted by the insurance company, maybe they have a more pleasant experience while they're trying to get cyber insurance or renew their insurance. Maybe they get it quicker or at a discount. And so organizations are now asking their cyber vendors if they have those established relationships.
Someone else like to fill in?
Thanks everyone for being here, and I'm happy also to share what I know. So I can make it really short, so detailed to what she said as far as answering the question, but I'll add a couple things. So one of the biggest threats, the way I see it, and working with a lot of customers in the field, everyone is complaining about you. So essentially users. So no matter how many controls we're going to implement and whatever we do at the end of the day, everything boils down to how well your users are educated. So there's always somebody there with a reaching hand on a mouse trying to click on this Amazon gift card for $100 and give up all the credentials. So the cybersecurity professionals, you need to build a program to account for that. And I can tell you the truth, no matter what you do, there are 2% of people will do it. No matter how successful your cybersecurity awareness program is, no matter how many times you tell, there will be always somebody. So one user is enough to infiltrate your environment. So essentially you need to build controls to understand what is happening, and hopefully you can filter out and through security awareness programs to understand better what users are doing and focus your education in particular areas. And the other thing I would add, also organizations trying to understand better, and I'm pretty sure you all do too, do you know where all your assets are? That's the biggest threat. So do you know if all your controls are actually deployed on all those assets? Do you have a metrics where you can say, hey, Mr. CEO or executive or board of directors, I have 100% coverage with choice of your EDR. If you cannot say that, now you combine this 2% of users who are wishing to click on something and missing security controls that should be there, but they're not there. And at the end of the day, you're probably going to end up with having something very interesting like ransomware, or somebody stole credentials, somebody stole the data, ended up on a paste bin or dark website, so on. So this is one thing, and I think also what our organizations are prioritizing and trying to get ahead of all those potential things that you're talking about users. It's behavior analytics and zero trust. So when you don't really trust anyone, it doesn't really matter who's clicking on what. You still have to verify whether it's individual, right owner, or right authorized, or it's supposed to have access to particular tools or not supposed to have access to particular data. So those things, when you combine them together, you can essentially build a little bit better response and more effective program to identify and respond to all those big threats that comes from cybersecurity. So that's kind of a little bit of my tidbit to this question.
Sure, I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So this goes along the way of the presentation I gave earlier. There's no surprise to anyone that human beings, us, are the most vulnerable, yet most powerful entities or individuals who are the threat, and the opposite is true too, that we can defend the company's assets. Besides making people aware and educating them about the threats that are out there, understanding how to tie this to their business, to the work that they do. For example, I use my organization as an example. We're in the social work business. For people to understand why do they care to protect their children's information is key to understanding that this data pertains to their well-being in a physical world. So once you kind of make that connection, they can understand, they can comprehend, they can become more equipped on why is this important and why they should listen or care. The second part is the technology literacy. So we have wide variety of users, some of them are more experienced than the others. Understanding how to use a tool properly, that also goes a long way. So it's not just about the threats that are out there, but using what they have in the right way. I don't know if some of you are familiar with swords and Japanese culture. It takes 7 years to master the Japanese sword. So basically the sword chooses you. And there's a reason for that. The methodology behind it is you become so used to certain things in a certain way that you become one. So that's the methodology or thought behind it, as meshing the tool and the individual together. So that goes with the technology too, because we like it or not, everything is automated. My Nespresso freaking machine wants to access the internet. I don't know why. It's not going to make coffee by itself. But the point is, since everything is becoming so driven and dependable or dependent on technology, so should our users become much more aware and techie savvy how to use these tools properly. So again, there's two sides of the coin, and one is making sure they understand the threats, because we are the most vulnerable yet individuals who can defend the organization. In the meantime, we can be the biggest risk to the organization. So we are liability and also biggest asset of any business.
Yeah, I got to continue this thought. Thank you. It's great to be with you today. I really liked what you said about the literacy aspect of technology. I think, generationally, we're at a point where a lot of the users that we talk about, and we lovingly call them carbon-based life form units, right? All they've known is technology. They've grown up with devices. It's all they've known. And so they do tend to take it for granted. They too tend to expect, to turn it on. It's like turning the water faucet on. It's supposed to be there. And so helping everyone understand what's going on in the plumbing, basically, is really, really critical. I would add one other thing to the idea of, what's most important, what are people missing? Well, I'll add a couple of things. How's that? I think we're also dealing with things like MFA fatigue. How many of you are tired of getting a text? Yeah, the one hand, boom, yes, no, but how do you really feel about it? It's obviously emotional to you. And it's true, we are. We're just like, oh, man. But that's what we've got. That's one of the best things that we've got. And so helping your users understand that that's part of their world and it's part of their responsibility to make them part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. I would only then add one of the biggest challenges is what I call the burnt marshmallow syndrome. You guys heard of the burnt marshmallow syndrome? No? Who likes burnt marshmallow? Somebody must. Yeah, good. Thanks for being honest there. A burnt marshmallow has a big crusty exterior, right? But what's going on in the inside? It's very fluid. It's moving all over the place. And those are the environments that we've created. As the devices get further away, as the edge becomes more apparent, as our perimeter becomes non-existent, we're still focused on creating this crusty exterior, and we're losing sight of what's going on the inside. So visualize through your technology activity on your network, activity with your data, activity with your users. What's happening on the inside of your marshmallow? Can you say that you know that? Because then you'll have the perimeter, and it's important. We need it. I'm not saying you don't. But we often lose that visibility, and then it's like, I'll just say, my wife, we used to live in London, and she got her purse stolen in Piccadilly Circus. And the guy grabbed it and went around the corner, and we later found the purse. But you know what he did? He ran around the corner, and he opened it up, and he goes, oh, here's an iPhone, and I don't care about that. That's what the bad guys are doing to you. They're in there rummaging around. They're looking for things. And so get your eyes on the inside of your organization as much as possible, and that will help you be a lot more safe and also be able to allow you to communicate the real things that are happening within your space to your users and your key stakeholders as well.
All right, thanks. So, time for the next question here. I will direct this first to Nikolay. And we'll hear about nation-state attacks. So, how concerned should ordinary organizations be about nation-state attacks? And what is the real threat for them?
All right, thanks, Haral. Well, I think it's a pretty loaded question, and how concerned organizations should be. So it's whether ordinary or extraordinary organizations, everyone should be concerned. The question is whether they can do anything about it or not. So while you look at enterprises with multi-billion-dollar revenues and million-dollar budgets for cybersecurity, they can extend their cybersecurity into outer space, so to speak, and to threat intelligence and try to provide some forward warnings before bad things happen, versus ordinary organization, let's say call them small businesses to medium-sized businesses, they're trying to stay afloat. They're trying to make their living, and their revenues are not there, their profit margins are not there, they can't really keep up with all the threats. So from what I've seen, they are concerned, and there are many ways that they try to address it because they could be collateral damage. So if you roll back to 2017 when NotPetya happened, MiDogs was not really something that Russians were targeting. So they were trying to hit Ukrainian government, and they were trying to go after them. So they figured it out. MiDogs is not really a secured organization, and a lot of organizations are using it. So they utilized whatever vulnerabilities they found, and they continued to exploit. And then you start looking and pivoting. A lot of organizations in the United States, UK, they got hit by the same NotPetya. They were not really target for Russians to come in and hit those organizations like Merck or shipping company Maersk, and you have DHL, and you have FedEx. So they all got hit by venue of the small vendors that they were dealing business with in Ukraine. So they had, so the same thing, a lot of vendors right now, if you start looking at a lot of small companies, they do a lot of business with Department of Defense. They do a lot of business with big companies, and you can also roll back time in 2012 when Target happened. The breach didn't happen because of Target, it happened because of HVAC vendor. Somebody exploited vulnerability and get into the environment, and we thought that we're not gonna have any more bar soaps and soap after Target was breached. But nonetheless, so that's a concern that they have, and most of them don't realize so that they can be just innocent bystander, somebody's trying, and the problem is they can't really boost their security to the level that they can actually be on par with organizations with multi-million dollars revenue. So that's essentially, and another thing that organizations should be concerned, like small businesses, it's part of the deal with espionage. So threat actors are nation states. They're not necessarily going to go after small companies just because they want to get something out of them. It's only they want to find another venue to get to the big companies. And that's like the biggest threat right now. And I'm pretty sure any one of you working for big organizations, you call it like third-party vendors, risk. And you're trying to be as cognizant as possible and understand as much as possible about what is going on there, how well organizations are structured, what small companies do in it, and then, at the end of the day, you ended up doing risk assessment, and it's like, okay, you send paperwork there, you receive it back, it's like, I think they're doing great, but until bad things happen, you don't know whether they've done it great or not with their cybersecurity. But yes, to answer the short, the organization should be concerned. The problem is there's not a whole lot small companies can do other than provide small and whatever incremental efforts they can do to build their cybersecurity and address risk as they come. Because their major concern is script kiddies and organized crime. That's where they're getting hit the most and where they're losing their revenues. But big guys like nation-sponsored attacks, it's hard to detect and it's hard for them to prevent.
So I agree. I think small to medium-sized organizations in particular should really have their shields up. Nation-state threat actors are interested in destabilizing the United States and hurt them. And whatever means I can do that, they're going to go after that. And if it's meaning, like you're saying, exploiting a small to medium-sized organization, they're going to do that because it's considered to be easier, because the idea is that a small organization is not going to have as much resources and deep pockets to spend towards a cybersecurity program. And so they probably think that's going to be easier to hack them, right? So in fact, there are some stats that are pretty scary for small to medium-sized organizations. The National Cybersecurity Alliance in the last couple of years indicated that 70% of the cyber attacks in the United States are targeting small to medium-sized organizations. Barracuda Network research indicated that an average employee that works for an organization that has 100 or less employees will experience 350% more social engineering attacks than an employee that worked for a larger organization. And one last scary stat is from Verizon, the data breach investigation report, indicated that between 2021 and 2022, there was a 200% increase on cyber attack targeting organizations that are 1,000 or less employees. So definitely not the time for these companies to put their shield down. In addition to Alexei mentioned collateral damage, he also mentioned supply chain. They could be targeted because they might have state secret or intellectual property that are of interest to the nation-state actor. An example of that would be all the organizations that make up the Defense Industrial Base, or the DIB. There are about 300,000 of them. 80,000 or so of them have access to data that is referred to controlled unclassified information, or CUI, that needs to be safeguarded, or dissemination needs to be controlled, because if it goes to the wrong hands, it could hurt the United States military and the DoD. So the DoD has been working towards this program that I'm sure you've heard about, the CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, where this 80,000 or so organization will have to be audited by a third-party auditing agency to make sure they're compliant with NIST 800-171. Right now, they only have to self-attest to that. In the future, they're going to have to be audited.
I'll add a few points to that. So I think it depends on what your organization is doing and the services or goods that are producing. Who do they have business with? Who are the contractor, off the contractor, down the chain? Anybody remembers Target hack? They went after HVAC company, right? If you're an HVAC provider, it's like, well, who's going to come after me? I'm just a service provider. I have nothing confidential, so to say, to hold on to. But the fact that this company was doing business with Target, that already made them a huge target by itself, so bad guys went after it. So there are a few elements to consider. As I said, who do you work with? And sometimes nation states just want to provide or do disruption of service, chaos, you name it. So every single individual, all the way to businesses and organizations, are a target. The only, I guess, distinction is if a nation state comes after you, less likely you can defend yourself versus if there are just a normal, less skilled individuals coming after you, granted that you have basic security measures in place. But nevertheless, every single individual is a target, no matter how big or small. I sometimes get this question, well, I'm just a secretary, who's going to target me? Not really. At least or at minimum, these individuals have keys to the kingdom, which is logging into the organization's network. So with that said, there is no time that you can say, oh, I'm less important than my neighbor or other big organizations. So I believe everything and everybody is a target.
And I'll just add one little thing. You think about Target. Have you ever flown over a Target store? What's on the top of it? A target. It's like, hit me. You know, they were asking, in my opinion. But you're right about this third-party thing. And I would just add that from a nation-state perspective, more and more we're seeing a lot of these ransomware attackers are associated with a nation or a state. And try to get your cyber insurance underwriter to pay for something that you got attacked by that was associated with a nation state. So I think that we've gone through the last 15, 20 years with this definition of nation state as being China's after me, Russia's after me, Korea, whatever it is. But in reality, that has spread out. It has been democratized, in my opinion, where a lot of attackers are associated and they're spreading the wealth to get at a lot. It's a numbers game. It becomes much more of a numbers game. You know, ditto everything that's been said. You know, you can't just take it for granted that you're not a target.
All right, thanks. So what I heard is that it doesn't really matter how big your company is. Nation state will go after you, even just for ransomware. If you think about how North Korea is financing their nuclear program, I think the one like, well, they extracted $10 billion of ransom to put toward their nuclear program in the last couple of years. And on a recent study of actually survey, 86% of surveyed organizations said they experienced a nation-state attack. So that's just increasing. So you have actors like Iran and North Korea looking for ransom, and then you have actors like Russia, you know, looking basically to brick Ukrainian satellite terminals or other infrastructure. So there's many types of attacks. Moving on to the next question. I'm going to direct the first question to Dale. And I'm going to say, what are the biggest challenges for security professionals in communicating the level of cyber threats to teams and boards? You have any strategies that are effective? Is there any takeaway for a CISO that wants to be more effective in communicating that?
Absolutely. We need to, when you're talking to the business, you're talking to the board, you're talking to, you know, the higher you go in an organization, you have to speak their language. We tend to get our graphs and our charts and all of our reports and spreadsheets together, and we come into the board and we say, hey, look at all these terrible things that are happening. And it's like speaking backwards Lithuanian to them. It's just totally clueless, and they don't understand. So make it simple. Okay, go back to kindergarten basically and draw nice big colors and small and big words. Not long words, but words that are big, right? And you really have to understand though, what is driving your business. Your job in IT and in security is to keep the revenue generating clock running. Basically, that's the bottom line, right? And so the people who care the most about the revenue, what do they care about? What are you trying to do as a business? If I asked one of you or each of you, what are the goals that your business has over the next 3 to 5 years? Could you tell me that? I hope so. If not, learn what that is. Learn what your business is trying to achieve, what their goals are, what their risks are. If you're a public company, read the 10K and look for an area called risk factors. By law, it's 1.A, it's by law, it has to be put in there. And these are the things that your company is concerned about that could happen. And when you talk to that and you say, let me show you, you said in this 10K that this is an issue or concern that you have, I want to show you how our department is helping you avoid that or achieve that or whatever it is. I think that's the biggest thing that you can do. And the biggest fault that I see a lot of, that we tend to come in with our language, our IT, our security language, and it doesn't translate. So speak it in their language. Not that you have to come and scare them to death, although that can help, but it needs to be straightforward. And one more thing. I would begin with the end in mind. Now, Stephen Covey wrote a book you may have heard of about 7 Habits years ago. One of those is begin with the end in mind. You have to do that when you're talking to people that you're asking something of. Might even be your spouse or your children. It's relationships. You tend to go into these meetings with all of your stuff and your slides and your spreadsheets, and you do what I call the dance. You talk about, we got all these things here, and it's all this scary stuff, and blah, 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 you won't believe it, and all, and I need this, and then you go, ta-da, this is why I'm here. By the time you get to the ta-da, they may be long gone in their minds. The higher you go in an organization, like I said, you got to be really focused and understand that they're ADD. They're all ADD, okay? They just have to be in order to be successful. So begin with the end. The reason I'm here today is to ask you for blank. I did this with a customer once. I said, the reason I'm here is to ask you for $100,000. And if you'll give me 15 minutes, I'm going to show you how I take that $100,000 investment and turn it into a $3 to $5 million pipeline over the next 5 years. May I have 15 minutes of your time? What do you think he said? He said, yeah. And where's his brain now? He wants to know, how are you going to do that? So put it that way and say, this is why we're here, and this is what, if you'll give me 15 minutes, this is what I want to show you that we'll do. Whether it's solving a problem or creating revenue, and I'll finish with this. I know I keep saying I'm going to finish, and I keep talking, right? There are 4 reasons why you buy things in IT. 4 reasons only. Security, IT, whatever it is. Number 1, it's going to increase revenue for your organization. Number 2, it's going to lower costs for your organization. Number 3, it's going to improve process for your organization. Or it's going to reduce risk or transfer risk or mitigate risk. Those are the 4 things. Maybe a combination, but those are the 4 things. So find out what's important to your organization. Show them how you and your need can achieve the goals that they have, okay?
Yeah, this goes along with what I said earlier, understanding what your business is all about. How many can say, I know exactly what the vision or mission of my business is? Usually there's some statements in your company or organization that talks about these things. And what's important is, based on my own experience, tying information security into the business mission goes a very long way. For example, if you're dealing with an attorney culture, client-attorney privilege, you're all familiar with that, right? What does that mean? Protecting their information. So there you go. You already have your entry point to get their attention. So these are little tricks that you can actually do to align yourself with the business. Most of the time, some CISOs come from an IT background and they lack proper communication to the board or executives. And if you don't grab their attention in the next 10 seconds, they're gone. They're absolutely tuned out. They're thinking for their next meeting. So understanding that is key. And then you build a program which is aligned, of course, with your business, and you tackle 3 things: people, process, and technology. Tie that into your organizational business requirements and mission, and you have a build now, an entry point, a discussion point that you can communicate to your board. Learn their language. What drives them? If I tell you I'm going to give you $100,000 right now, what would you do? Yeah, sure, give it to me. But if I ask you to give me $100K, what would you say? Well, let's see what's in it for me, right? So are the organizations. They're in the business of making money. So they have to understand why is certain things important, why I should do or should not do. And also bringing the culture of a business enabler mindset versus saying no to them. We are there for them, not the other way around, right? So they're spending money, they're hiring security consultants, they're hiring CISOs, they're employing tools, they're spending money. Why? Because they want their job to become easier. They don't want the business to shut down. They don't want their reputation to interrupt it or get a bad rep out there and lose revenue. So we have to understand this motives and drivers for businesses and bring them to a point where they will ask you to come and sit on the table, because now you're not only saying, yes, we can do so, but you're also protecting the business assets and business continuity. So I think the collection of these will help organizations elevate their cybersecurity posture and become better at what they do.
Thank you. I just say I agree with everything that you said. One thing that boards do understand well, as Dr. Z described. They understand risk and they understand finances. So one thing you should be avoiding is making your cybersecurity program bigger than the risk they're trying to address. And I can share anecdotal evidence when it was my first presentation to the board and I trotted out all happy. It's like, okay, this cybersecurity program is going to cost you about 8 million a year. And the CEO asks, like, so how often am I getting an incident? It's like, no, on average, you're going to be getting it once in 10 years. So it's like, okay, so how much are we going to pay for incident when it happens? Like, maybe 1.7, 2 million. So he goes like, if I don't do anything, an incident happens in once in 10 years, I'm going to be saving almost like $60 million without doing anything. It's like, yeah, I got the point, so I need to rework. So additional thing that they also understand very well, regulations. So if you know what you're trying to protect and what kind of control you put in place, there is not really much they can say to say, hey, here's a regulation that requires this particular control to be in place, and this is the best way for me to do it and the most cost effective. They can quickly put dollars and cents together and say, yep, I'm sure you're going to get approval for that. Or they may argue here and there point to make it cheaper or more effective or some other way. So that's kind of, and the other two things they also understand well, it's due diligence and due care. So due diligence is like basic minimum requirement that the company has to meet to make sure that the board doesn't look bad in front of somebody else. And due care, they don't want to spend over somebody else who is in your peer group. So you don't want to go there with a huge budget and say, well, here's like all the fancy things I'm going to do and we're going to be at the top. They're going to say, well, is it going to buy me a lot of risk down? Or I'm going to just spend too much money for something that I don't really need. So I don't want to be underspending, but I don't want to be hugely overspending. So you have to balance it out and you have to bring the risk back into conversation and help them to understand what you're trying to address.
So I agree with everything they said. One thing that I would add is that I think communication challenges directly to the board are also different depending for who the CISO is reporting to, right? So I work with a lot of small to medium-sized organizations, and in those cases, the CISO does not report directly to the CEO. They report to the CTO or the CFO, and there is some conflict of interest there, right? So if the CISO report to the CIO, for example, or CTO, who is also responsible for IT. So on one end, IT is all about developing solutions and time to market is very important. And then on the security side, they want to make sure those solutions are safe. And so they infuse checks and gates to make sure best practices are being implemented. So there is a little bit of conflict of interest there. If the CISO reports to the CFO, CFO is all about budgets, and so there might be some resistance in bringing forward some recommendations that CISOs are making about investing in some solutions, some technology, right? And then if the message that the CISO brings is brought to the board from the CTO or the CFO, it gets diluted, right? And that's why it's so important that for the CISOs to be very diligent in documenting all the recommendations that are being brought forward, regardless if they're approved or not approved. One thing that I think might be helpful or help a little bit is the SEC proposed rules to enhance the cybersecurity posture of public organizations and financial institutions. Might help with this communication. Some of the things that they're requiring is that public organizations disclose any material incidents within 4 days, that they disclose their risk assessments and they have treatments in place to address the risk, and most importantly, that they disclose the level of cybersecurity expertise at the board level, meaning that if they don't have any, they are gonna need to get some. So I think that is gonna help in the future with communication.
All right, thanks for that. So I've heard that you've either been hacked or you don't know you've been hacked. So as my next question then is, should organizations prioritize allocating more resources to recovering from cyber incidents or preventing cyber attacks? And what do you think that increased focus should involve?
So I think I agree that there is no way to reduce risk to zero, the residual risk to zero, unless you get rid of the asset that you're trying to protect, right? And so in that sense, eradication, detection, and recovery is very important. For small to medium-sized organizations that don't tend to have that expertise in-house, so they work with third-party vendors that do have that expertise. Several of them were here today. But then also having strong contingency plans like incident response, business continuity plan, disaster recovery plans, and not have a version that was written by ChatGPT and put on a shelf and then let it collect dust. That should be exercised, at least reviewed and tested at least annually, and everybody that is part of the contingency team should be very aware of those plans. But having said that, I still think that prevention is also very important, and organizations, regardless of their size and vertical, should conduct periodic risk assessments and implement solutions that controls that are in alignment with the organization level of cyber risk tolerance.
So I think it's, yes, it's impossible, but it's also, we can make it a little bit easier. And I have, again, anecdotal story that many years ago I worked for one gentleman, and we had conversations. So we had a certain event happen, and I had to explain to him what was going on and then how we're going to defend against it. And so he went on and started explaining to me, it's like, Nikolay, pretend you're a general, and this is your castle. You need to be big moat, and then you need to put big walls. So threat actors not gonna come. I said, have you heard about dragons? They can go, or it's like, he looked at me, it's like, what do you mean? It's like, I can't really prevent something that I don't even know where it's coming from. Okay, then can you stop threat actors from coming? I said, no, I don't really have this option to hit the nuclear button and say, okay, I don't even know where they are. So they can come in from any place, and so I had to do a lot of explanation to say, look, this is really asymmetrical warfare. I have to succeed once, and I have to succeed 100% of the time. So incidents will happen. No matter what we do, we just need to minimize the blast area, and then we need to put appropriate controls in place to make sure that when something like that happens, we're going to have minimal impact organization, and it's going to be non-event. So we can put all those preventive measures in place, and we can build, big moat, we can build large defenses and whatever you name it. But at the end of the day, as I said it in the first question, it comes down to users. They're going to bring something over all those defenses that you built, and then you have to figure it out how to defend yourself and to make sure this user that brings something in has very minimal access to whatever they just need to have access. So you're reducing the blast area, and then you're preventing big incidents from happening, and hopefully at the end of the day it's going to be non-event for you. So that's kind of one way that I can say is like, and the way I explain in cybersecurity program to all the boards and everyone that I work with, it's like it's impossible to say that I'm not going to guarantee anything. And plus also, if you're in position of a CISO right now, you probably follow in SolarWinds and the ACC, so conversation becomes really tenuous, depending where it's going to go. So you cannot make those claims that you're going to 100% prevent all the incidents, and you have to be really careful what you put on a paper and what you communicate, so you're not going to be in the same position as CISO of SolarWinds.
What I have my cybersecurity program, the vision says cyber resiliency, meaning the attacks will happen, the breaches will happen, how quickly or how fast we can recover from these data breaches. So it's inevitable. It used to be taxes and death, and now cyber breaches and data compromises. It will happen. So basically when you're adding or having the end in mind, as you said, the breach is going to happen. The goal is to become, recover from these potential disruptions as soon as possible. Then you can kind of, I guess, make your way backwards to say, okay, what can I do? What are my weakest point? What are the most vulnerable areas that I can improve when I'm building my program to make sure when it happens, not if, when it happens, I can recover fast. I see a lot of organizations, when attacks happen, they have absolutely no plan. So at a time of crisis, it's time to execute the plan, not plan the plan. Be very mindful of that, and I see that a lot. tabletop exercises, building scenarios, knowing who to call, what to do, instead of panicking. So that really goes a long way. Although what I'm saying seems anecdotal, but it's real. It's absolutely a real story. I see a lot of companies, sometimes tech companies, they don't have these basic elements in place. When a data breach happens, they stumble. They have no idea where to start, what to do. So building that program where having the end goal in mind, we know it's going to happen, how fast, how quick we can recover and prevent business disruptions to moving forward.
Yeah, that's so true. When you have a plan, right? You've got your recovery resilience plan, and then the attack happens, and where's the plan? Everybody goes, "Where's the plan? Where's the plan?" Oh, it's on SharePoint. Oh, it's on SharePoint. Those are the kind of things. There's a former CIO, I believe, of City of Los Angeles, named Ronnie, a woman. Does that ring a bell? So I'm dating myself now. I'm going way back that you can't remember. But thinking about risk, there's another factor of risk that we often forget about, and that's probability. And this is something that can help in that conversation with your leaders as well. So let's take a server room, for example. One of the things that servers do not like is water, right? Water and servers, don't mix. But what's the probability that you're going to get water in a server room? It's pretty low, isn't it? We build them up, we put berms around them, we protect them physically from water. Unless you're in Los Angeles, and this is the conversation I had with Ronnie about 15 years ago, they have a data center that sits underneath a municipal swimming pool. Not that far from the San Andreas Fault. So, and she looked at me and she said, "That's all I could get." So, we said, okay. But think now let's talk about what's the risk to your data center for water. So you have to think about probability, and the probability discussion will help you, or the probability analysis will help you in the discussion with your team and with your organization. So add that to your equation when you're talking about risk.
All right, great. So I'm going to move on to start with Alan. Question about AI. So in what ways are you leveraging AI and machine learning to enhance your organization's security posture? What challenges have you faced in integrating AI into your program, and how have you addressed them?
Yeah, so AI, what is AI? It's basically a bunch of computer program, algorithm, supposed to come close or essentially replace human intelligence. So what we do today, we want to automate as much as possible, and we want this tool, this program to become smart enough so it can make decisions on our behalf. Hopefully, these are the right decisions. So there are, again, two sides to it, just like anything else. With every good thing, there's also peril to it, too. Good thing is it can automate a lot of things, can make our lives far easier, from threat detection, anomaly detection, reporting, preventing. All this is great. But now, as I was talking about it earlier in my presentation, how do we know the results that we're getting is accurate? So having that check and balances in place to making sure that return results are accurate, are consistent, and there's no way this, so to say, intelligent program is going to make mistakes, not deliberately, but by accident. What if there is deliberate measures in place? What if someone gets into the AI and modifies the code where a threat actor is inside, but it tells you everything is good? I brought an example of ChatGPT. I did an article research and gave me digital identified number, which is unique per scholarly article. It's like that identification number per article. There is no two of the same thing. And I checked it out. It happened to be a fake DOI number. It was crazy, and also kind of an eye-opener where the programs can make assumptions that may not be realistic or what is really happening under the hood. So the use of AI is, again, extremely beneficial, very useful. And if you're following the media, from Elon Musk to other individuals or organizations who are developing deep core AI, the danger still exists where AI taking over, not in a sense that we see in the movies, but in a sense that gives us or feeds us false information, not so real information. And we happen to believe that because it keeps popping up in our screens, in our phones, in our message boards, And before you know, it becomes a program in your head, and AI taking over. That's the part where is really scary, where it feeds us information or even changes our beliefs about life, about family, about the world, about the facts. That's the danger part that we have to be careful, and having that checks and balances in place where we can double check the results, or at least have a fail-safe if something goes wrong, how we can really recover that flaw.
I'm going to jump in while the microphone's right here. Thank you. I wrote a paper about AI and the responsible use of AI a few months ago. Yesterday, there's an article in The Register, which is a UK publication, about a company in France that was able to poison or affect a large language model. So you understand AI, there are these large language models that are built that then ChatGPT or some other program can run on and utilize. And they were able to, and they did this just to show it could be done. Okay, they weren't trying to be malicious. But basically they poisoned the large language model so that anybody using it through whatever algorithm they chose got these really crazy results. Things like, who was the first man on the moon? And it came out, Yuri Gagarin was the first man on the moon. So I mean, just like silly things. But now extrapolate that out to what this can mean. This is one of the most consequential junctures in the history of technology, and I don't say that lightly. It's an opportunity for us, unlike anything we've seen before, but it's also one of the most important things that we get right. And so, for example, what we're trying to do is think about your organization and that you have all the stuff that you've kept for how many years in your organization. We're giving the ability to query that using a large language model and an algorithm for you to say, for example, we had a cyber attack in 2008. Tell me what we did and how we got through this, or tell me what we learned about it. Things like that, where now you're going to use your own data to answer questions about your business. And it doesn't have to be just technology and cyber. It could be anything to do with running the business. So there's a lot of opportunity here, not just for writing a paper on ChatGPT and giving it to your teacher, but really from a business standpoint where you can use the data that you already have and start to answer questions about things that are extremely relative to your organization. But we all have to do our part and be good citizens in this space, because it's exciting, but it's also very, very, very nerve-wracking. So,
just really quick add to it. So, how many of you raise your hands if you really, really, really like to write policies and procedures? You don't count. So that's one of the AI use you can leverage. You can certainly leverage just to write your policies and procedures. You want to make them bigger, you want to make them shorter, however you like it. So I used it, and it's quite effective. You just need to verify whatever it writes back, because it has tendency to be very authoritative in something that it doesn't know. Because again, as Dr. Z said, certain things built certain way, and then whatever comes back may not even applicable to your organization. But what you can do, get the framework and then apply knowledge of and concept of your organizations, and lo and behold, within a few hours, you can have really beautiful looking policies that you can publish. And the other thing, when you talk about certain things, we talk about finance, we talked about how to talk to the boards. Again, don't use word by word what AI produces. But you can write your thing that you want to present to the board, then put it in and ask them to make it better. Or ask them to how you're going to use it in finance context, how to apply business context to it. And then see what comes back. And ask you several times and see the several variations, and then you can use those things and say, okay, now I can improve my language, I can do certain things. For me, it's certainly helpful, because my English is only fourth language that I speak. So I certainly use whatever tools I can at my disposal to make it better and to make sure that certain mistakes are not there, because you're talking to the board, they expect to see something that actually is written by English proficient individual, not somebody who just come off the street and start writing. So those are the things, and as Dr. Raji mentioned, you can learn a lot from it as well. If you want to bring a lot of artifacts about certain things, you can just ask a question and see what is going to come back. If you do want to do some analysis, but again, be careful what comes back, because certain things come back in a way that if you just copy and paste, you're going to embarrass yourself. So just learn from it, understand it, and then apply to it and see how it works.
Yeah, so we're focusing on the generative AI bots, right? The ChatGPT, the Google Bard. I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. I use them all the time. I'm one of those people that actually hates to write policies and procedures, so I use them for like a first draft of them. I use them to threat intelligence work. I use them to vet vendors. But I also understand that while these technologies are extremely powerful and transformative, there are challenges with their use. And if they are misused, there could be very serious consequences. So we heard a lot of the issue with the hallucinations, right? Sometimes you get an answer that sounds so cool and so seems so legit, but it's complete BS. And you have people like for example, the attorney in New York, they used ChatGPT to work on a case, and then it was citing cases in court that were completely bogus. So not a good look for a CISO attorney, right? There are obviously huge privacy concerns. So you have like, going back to what we talked about earlier, the insider threats, the careless and the clueless. There were some Samsung's employees, not sure which one of these two C's, but they put into ChatGPT a bunch of the source code, which then was public domain. And now Samsung is either completely banning the use of ChatGPT or severely restricting it. They're not the only one. JP Morgan, other large organizations, smaller organizations are doing that too. There are concerns also with bias, right? With this technology, we know it's biased. So if you're using this technology to make decisions, make sure that you take in consideration the bias part of it. In fact, I think New York at the beginning of this month has banned the use of this this type of technology for applicant screening, right? Or unless the technology has not been vetted by a third-party auditor that says, yeah, it doesn't have any bias, which I'm not sure if any of them do or not. So I believe they're extremely beneficial, and especially in the cybersecurity world, but in any other vertical. But if an organization allows their employees to use it, there should be very defined, acceptable use of policies of these technologies, and employees should be properly trained.
Great. So before I open the questions to the floor, I have one more question about AI. That is that now you can go to ChatGPT and you can get an exploit for a vulnerability, right? So hackers can do that. So now with AI and automation increasingly being used by threat actors, how are you preparing to defend against these emerging threats? And looking forward, how do you see AI evolving in the cybersecurity field? And what opportunities and challenges may arise as a result?
So cyber actors and threat actors are already doing an extremely good job at hacking. And so this is only going to make it worse. They're obviously leveraging this technology to help them craft sophisticated malware attacks. They've enhanced, the whole social engineering with the deep fake getting better, the voice messages that you think is your boss leaving it to you, but is an AI technology creating it. And they're all phishing, right? At least there should be a time where we could train employees and say, if an email has a bunch of spelling mistakes or is poorly crafted in English, then it might be a big flag that is a phishing email. Don't click on anything. Don't download anything. Well, now ChatGPT, that flag is gone away, right? So and then you have experts in the field that are also sounding the alarm bells, right? Elon Musk and other experts are suggesting a 6-month pause. The CEO of OpenAI, which is a vendor that makes the ChatGPT, thinks that it should be regulated like the International Atomic Energy Agency. So obviously there are concerns. Congress is working with these experts, are drafting laws and regulations, which sounds great, but I'm kind of worried because the bad guys are not going to care about laws and regulations, and they're going to find their ways to still misuse the technology. And so I just want to make sure that the good guys, as a fair fight, and a chance to beat the bad AI. But it's very exciting time, but also scary time at the same moment.
So I'm pretty sure you've heard the news not so long ago when ChatGPT was released that Italy banned flat out, right? And the reason was because ChatGPT suggested you can put pineapple on pizza, huh? So it didn't work for Italy. So the example I'm trying to make here, so when we talk about AI, we have a lot of regulations, and we already expressed our concerns here for responsible use. So everyone here probably will try to follow certain regulations, how it's going to be used, what you can do, what you cannot do, well, except for in asymmetrical warfare that we are in cybersecurity, threat actors don't really care for responsible use of AI. And Bruce Schneider wrote many, many months ago a book about it's impossible to make software really bulletproof because of the complexity and how many connections, how many if estimates and everything else is being made. So essentially, somebody who is going to leverage AI to figure out what next vulnerability is, we are at huge disadvantage because we can't really do responsibly this thing because we have laws, we have regulations we can't use. But in my way of looking at it, we can still do certain things that threat actors do. And if we leverage and understand better how we can use AI to do our pen test, because it's going to do a lot better, in my opinion, than humankind, because it can go through a lot of interpretation, permutation, variations to see what potentially can be exploited. So if a human mind, yes, it gets creative, and pen testers can be really good at whatever they do, but they still have limited capacity, limited time in whatever they're trying to accomplish certain goals. So deploying AI to say, yes, I want to get pen test the heck out of this website or whatever API I have or whatever other things to find any possible vulnerabilities. If you have on your team somebody who can use it, you'll have advantage against threat actors because that's potentially what they do. They seek AI against your organization and see what they're going to come up with. So they built exactly the same copy and they can try to feel. The other thing, use AI to write emails in phishing expeditions, so to speak. So if you do phishing campaigns, try to leverage AI to help you to write the same emails that actually threat actors will be using. Because before, you've probably seen a lot of misspelled and all this. With leverage of AI, I don't think threat actors is going to be making so many mistakes in emails anymore. It will be a lot more potent emails for somebody to fall through. So you kind of need to step up your game. Use the same tools will help essentially your organization to do better security awareness programs.
So I think we talked about the benefits of it. Nobody's questioning how an AI can benefit organizations to do things probably as good or even better as what we do, and basically cloning our intelligence in a way that multiple simultaneous tasks can happen in a far better and efficient way. As we talked about the risks too, so I'm going to use this example. How many or who knows what is the difference between a surgeon who goes and cuts a body versus a serial killer? Do you know the difference? Their brain works identically the same. They're almost the same personality, except one saves life, the other one takes life. So my point is, yes. That's right. So the point is the use case. What are you going to use the AI for? Are you going to attack a state or nation or attack businesses, or are you going to use that to help save perimeter, save data, and become more efficient in your business and what you do? It depends on whose hands it gets to. So building ethics and responsible use of anything, including AI, is absolutely a must. But do bad guys play the same rules? I don't think so. So if our nation is in a position to defend our critical infrastructures, should they play by the rules and play ethical with the adversaries, or no, it should be the other way around? So all these different use cases are important to consider, and depending on what type of business we are and what we are trying to accomplish, that will dictate how to use certain tools, including AI, including our artificial intelligence.
I don't want to break the flow here. Everybody's got to have the microphone. But there's been a lot of really good things said here. I would only add that I think AI is at a point that we were at in software development in its infancy. in the sense that if you're a developer or you were a developer 20 years ago plus, you developed software and then what did you do with it? You gave it to the QA team to test it and see if it worked. And pretty soon we learned that that's not the way to develop software, that you have to plan for security along the way. And I think that's where we're at with AI. I spoke about these large language models earlier. I think what we need is more, I don't mean to say we need more regulation, but we need more concern and effort in the construction of, say, a large language model and a process of software development that security is implicit in its design. Because as this group out of France showed, they just went in there and changed it, and then whoever uses it, they're infected, they're affected. And so that's where we need to be, I think. And I think you will see more regulations and more concerns about it. I mean, just this past week, the US and Europe now have this data exchange agreement. These are the things that are going to happen more and more, but AI is going to facilitate and speed it up exponentially. But we need to be, I mean, this is the message, right, is responsibility across the board.
All right, thanks. And unfortunately, it was a great discussion. That was great, but we're out of time. So a hand to everyone.
Thank you.
And Kim is ready to do the raffle, right?
All right. Thank you all.